And welcome to Gunner Shot. Gunner Shot में आप सबका स्वागत है. I have with me General Hasnain. He and I are going to discuss the tsunami and their times thereafter as far as disaster management is concerned. But then, 20 years back, the 2004 tsunami struck us. It was devastating. To give you an overview of what happened then and thereafter, have a look at this short film.
That occurred off the coast of Indonesia had devastating consequences. We lost so many lives across so many countries. The worst impacts were, of course, in Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and India. But countries as far as Tanzania, from where I am recording this video, were also very badly impacted. It really showed us how sometimes hazardous events, particularly some low frequency, high impact kind of hazards, can have impacts that will ripple across the entire global system and across multiple geographies. In so many ways, that Indian Ocean tsunami was a wake-up call for humanity to do more, to have a much better understanding of disaster risks. People who were impacted in that disaster were not just from the 5 countries that I listed, the worst affected countries, but from across the world. People who've been warned have taken the right kinds of steps to protect themselves. So this is a huge progress we've made in the last 20 years, and it's an example of unprecedented global collaboration for an important area of common good. We have to do more. We have to continue to keep the awareness of tsunami risk high, because tsunamis do not occur frequently, but when they occur, their effects can be devastating. So it's really important that we do not forget the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and continue to do everything we can do to protect ourselves, our children, our future generations from the impact of future tsunamis. Thank you.
Yeah, that was about the 2004 tsunami. But disasters have kept happening. And the question at hand is, have we done more, as it was pointed out in the movie, and have we done enough? But before that, there's something else I want to put across. Tsunamis and security have a direct connect. Whatever you do for the security of the nation, almost the same capabilities are required for handling disasters or a tsunami of this kind. That's the first part. The second part, this tsunami of 2004 was a catastrophic event for many people and many nations. But in this catastrophe, there was an opportunity for India. And India rose to the occasion. The Indian Navy and India went out to the seas despite its own losses. And it was only the Indian Navy and the US Navy which were there to provide succor to those who were devastated. Significantly, the Chinese Navy, the much flaunted PLA Navy, had shut shop in Shanghai. And that was when people decided or came to know the innate capability of India. And that was when the Quad was born. And that was when the concept of India being the net security provider in the Indian Ocean region came about. But today we are much more than that. Whether it was the Wuhan virus or the Ukraine war or the Turkey earthquake or the Nepal earthquake, we've been there, we've done more. And more importantly, we've done enough for ourselves. But I'm not the person to talk about this. In fact, I'm hardly qualified. And that is why I've requested General Atta Hasnain to come and give out his views because he's from the National Disaster Management Authority of India. Sir, over to you.
Thank you. Namaskar to everyone, all our viewers. The 26th of December, Boxing Day, 20th anniversary of Tsunami. You just heard a colleague of mine. Perhaps you were wondering who this gentleman was who was giving you this talk on the tsunami of 2004 from Tanzania. That's none other than Mr. Kamal Kishore, who was till May my colleague at the National Disaster Management Authority, and thereafter was selected. He's a disaster management specialist. He was selected by none other than the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he is now the special representative of the Secretary General for Disaster Risk Resilience in Geneva. And he does this job internationally, all over the world, right? He is really one who really knows this subject extremely well. Now, coming to the current subject here today. Today is the 20th anniversary of this. I just come back a few days ago from Andaman and Nicobar Islands. I was invited by the headquarters Andaman and Nicobar Command. As you are aware, that's the only joint services command of the three services. And they were conducting, and they had conducted a event, a seminar for 2 days. Frankly saying, I have for many years not attended a better seminar. It was a seminar with a heart. Conducted with 3 different domains as a part of it. The first part of it had a lot of people who were tsunami survivors from 2004, from the Car Nicobar Island, from the Andaman itself, from Port Blair. They came to share their views. They were all survivors that came to share their views. We had young people whose parents, who lost their parents there, now grown up. They're young adults today, and they gave out their thing completely. Then the second thing, we had a set of technical discussions in which I gave out the keynote, and we had many other professionals there to talk about tsunami in general and disaster management otherwise. How much has it developed in India? How disaster resilient is India today? And then we also had a short portion on geopolitics and the geostrategic affairs. Because you are in the Andamans, how can you forget the fact that you are so close to the Straits of Malacca, which is, the bone of contention as far as China is concerned. It's a part of the Indian Ocean region. It also forms an area of interest of the Quad, the Quadrilateral of Nations. So we had experts there who were talking on that. 3 issues, when you take one single subject and take 3 issues, it was wonderful to be there, intellectually very, very, motivating for us to attend a event of that nature. So I was constrained. When I came back, I said, I think I can only do service to this by writing out an article which should appear on the 26th of December. It should appear in a high-profile paper like the Indian Express. They were very kind to publish it immediately, and that's how my article came out this morning, and lots of people may have read it. Now, the first issue, which I want to highlight for you. In 2004, no one knew what a tsunami is. I rushed to a dictionary. There was no Google search on my phone at that time, and we went to look at what is tsunami. Oh, it's a wall of water which comes rushing when you have an undersea earthquake. That's what we learned. It gave a kind of a trigger to many events to follow subsequently. So what was this particular tsunami? A 1,000-kilometer trench of the coast of Indonesia, close to the Car Nicobar Island, erupted in a 9.1 Richter scale earthquake. It's one of the very large earthquakes, a mega earthquake, right? Now, when it ruptures, when the earth ruptures at for 1,000 kilometers long, a rupture taking place, the amount of energy is millions and millions of joules or tons or whatever you have, whatever unit of measure you have, right? It throws up energy to such a great extent that the energy takes the water from there and takes it all the way to Africa. This is what happened in this case. So people got up in Andamans at about 8 in the morning and suddenly felt this jolting earthquake which lasted for the better part of, a couple of seconds, and then continued with aftershocks. And people told me that they heard noises. There were actually sounds taking place coming from all over. People, particularly in the Karnataka Islands. No one had any knowledge. What can happen from an undersea earthquake? It doesn't take place every other day. It had not happened for a couple of 100 years, perhaps. Small tsunamis had happened here and there in the South Pacific, but no one learned about it. No one looked and pursued it. So everyone just said, "Oh, an earthquake has taken place. Everything is shaken. The Karnataka Island had shaken. Port Blair had shaken, etc." Now what? No one knew what was the next thing. And while they were looking at this, suddenly the first sign of what happens after an undersea earthquake takes place, what happens? The sea started receding. 1.5 kilometers it receded. And corals came out. Beautiful corals, different colors came out. People told me this. Animals started running towards higher ground. That's what all people later on who experienced this told us. They ran. Local people, Aborigines particularly there, took flight and went towards the higher ground. They could feel it in their bones that something is coming. Human beings couldn't. And suddenly, 20 minutes after occurrence of the earthquake, a sudden surge of water came. It's been described as 10 meters high, 15 meters high, places as 20 meters high. It first hit the Karnataka Island. It hit the various hotels and resorts on the Thailand coast. It hit Indonesia in the area of Aceh. 20 minutes time, this area was devastated. I don't have to describe the. You can go on to YouTube and have a look at some of the devastation which took place in these areas, right? When the wall of water came. The water came, then it was swept back, it came again, it got swept back again. So there were lots and lots of people who drowned. There were some who caught on to some debris and managed to flow back with the water into the ocean. There was this young girl, Meghna, who was 12 years old, who lost both her parents, and she floated for the better part of 2 days and then floated with the debris onto an island where she was picked up by some fishermen. Later on today, she's 32 years old, and she's a deep sea diver herself. She's a deep sea rescuer today. So that's the kind of thing which happens. Now, that's not only in the Andaman Islands. The distance from the Andaman Islands to the coastline Chennai, Tamil Nadu, is 1,200 kilometers. Similar distance is there to Sri Lanka, maybe a little more. It took 2 hours for this wave to reach there. The sea on top remains absolutely calm. It is the pressure which has been released, which flows from here under sea, and a huge wave of energy travels all along through the underwater passage on ultimately when it meets land. That's where it erupts into a massive wave. And that happened to Chennai, Marina Beach itself. So that's very close to where Jan Shankar himself lives, actually. So that's what happened. And we lost almost 10 to 11, 12,000 people dead. Right. And we had 2 hours. We had 2 hours since the time when the earthquake took place. Now, the time the tsunami got formed, it took 2 hours for it to reach. We had enough time. But no one knew about this. There was no system. There was an earthquake monitoring system, all right. But and the Indian Center, the International Center for Oceanic Information Services, INCOIS, which is in Hyderabad, had already been set up. But it didn't have this kind of a capability to monitor a sea wave that far away, an earthquake that far away, and then subsequently be able to disseminate that information. So if the early warning had been given, let's say, even half an hour after Andamans was hit, and that such a thing is likely to be traveling towards the Indian coastline, it was not evident, but it was happening under the water. But if a tsunami center was there, it would have automatically perceived this and would have warned the coastline. All the villages could have been evacuated. People would not be moving around on marina. People would have moved back. You wouldn't have had this loss of life. So that's the first thing which we need to know, that after this, one of the first things that the government of India did was to set up an Indian Tsunami Early Warning Center, ITEWC, as a part of INCOIS. Right? Today we have that capability. We have that capability, and we are giving warnings to 26 countries in the Indian Ocean Rim, IOR area. Right? Complete. Recently we've given it to Mozambique. Right? And we are also actually giving warnings into up as far as the South Pacific, but specifically more to 26 countries in this area. If at all an earthquake takes place, then we have the capability to monitor a tsunami and give them the necessary warning and tell them which is the area which is likely to be affected most, which is going to be hit by what size of the tidal wave which will come and hit that area. Now, I may be taking a step further to increase your confidence. The government of India is working. Government of India means, in this case, the National Disaster Management Authority is working on a early warning dissemination system. So this is the information provider. INCOIS becomes the information provider. And now we have a system which is called the Common Alerting Protocol, which means that if INCOIS tells us that this wave is going to hit from so-and-so point in Odisha to so-and-so point in Tamil Nadu, we can draw a polygon on a GIS map which has this area. All the mobile numbers in that area will get captured. We draft a message. Let's say the Tamil Nadu SDMA, State Disaster Management Authority, drafts this message, drafts it in Tamil, drafts it in Odia, the Odisha Disaster Management Authority, any other languages, and then puts this out. This message will go as a mass message and reach the mobile phones of everyone and tell them to take the necessary precautions, immediately to move out, etc. Alarms will go along the coast. Now, what you'll be happy to know is that today there are 24 disaster-ready villages, tsunami-ready villages in Odisha. The intention of the government is to make sure that all the villages along the coastline which are likely to be affected by a tsunami are all made disaster ready, which essentially means you must have an alarm system. You must have a system by which that area you start getting some kind of blaring sirens, right? You must have routes marked out to where you should go to higher ground. You should have permanent kind of accommodation built there for people to be able to go there and stay for some time if that their area is inundated. There are roads and etc. to be made there. Electricity, etc. will continue because all cabling has been done underground. So this is how you make an area disaster resilient. I agree, we have not reached the end of the road as far as we are doing this is concerned. Odisha is well ahead, is doing it well, been recognized internationally by UNESCO, by everyone else, that Odisha is doing a very fine job on it. Tamil Nadu is doing similarly, right? So there is a tremendous amount of readiness for this. More important than all this is the fact that people now have the knowledge and they know what is a tsunami. So they know an 8.5, 8.2, 9 Richter scale earthquake has taken place. It's been announced on the radio, etc. has taken place in so-and-so area. They know it. We could be hit. Now they will take the necessary precautions against it. So this is a very fine thing which is developing. It's not only on the eastern coast. We are similarly developing on the western coast also. Although there is no sort of a possibility immediately. We are not aware of any major trenches, any seismological, sort of sensitivity in these areas. But if it happens, God forbid, if it happens, then we should be similarly ready on the West Coast. Now, having said that, let me add one more point here. It's important for confidence building of India to know that the tsunami was the last of the cascade of three disasters. The first was the Odisha super cyclone called Paradeep, 1999, where over 10,000, 12,000 people died. The second was the Bhuj earthquake of 26th of January 2001. Again, over 10,000 people died. These two events led to the Agriculture Ministry, which used to handle disaster management in India, to hand over this responsibility to the Ministry of Home Affairs, because you needed to prepare and you needed to have a response system. And the third in this cascade of disasters was the Indian Ocean tsunami of 26 December 2004. It finally led to the enactment of the Indian National Disaster Management Act of December 2005. Under that, three institutions were set up. The NDMA as the apex body, the National Disaster Management Authority, of which I am a member today, with the Prime Minister of India as the chairman. I mean, the importance they gave to the NDMA was none other than the Honorable Prime Minister of India was designated as his chairman. So we report to the Honorable Prime Minister of India. And our controlling ministry, all authorities have a controlling ministry, like the National Highway Authority of India has got the Ministry of Road and Transport and Highways. The University Grants Commission has got the Ministry of Education. So ours is the Ministry of Home Affairs. And we do a tremendous amount of work with the MHA, with the Prime Minister's organization, the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, and with the Prime Minister himself. That's the NDMA. Two other institutions got set up. The second was the NDRF, the National Disaster Response Force. And this is different to the NDMA. Unfortunately, a lot of people are confusing the NDMA and the NDRF. I get queries, hundreds of queries every day. Sir, are you a member of NDRF? I said, I'm not a member of NDRF. I'm a member of NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, which is the apex body for writing guidelines, for doing coordination of disaster, for writing out the doctrine, right? And similar such things, right? This entire business of preparedness, response, build back better, the whole cycle of disaster is looked after by National Disaster Management Authority. The NDRF is the response arm, a very, very important organization, response arm. Prior to 2005, it was always the police forces, right? Local police forces, CRPF, etc. after that, and then the Indian Armed Forces, who responded to this everywhere. But after 2005, it was realized that we needed a higher professionalization. The world was shifting towards professionalization of disaster management. So the NDRF was set up with 8 units at that time. Today it's got 16 units. How was it set up? Classically, the Rashtra Rifles model, which the Indian Army followed in setting up the Rashtra Rifles in Kashmir, that is the model which was followed, which meant, in the case of Rashtra Rifles, one infantry regiment took ownership of 3 units. For example, my regiment, the Garhwal Rifles, took ownership of 14 Rashtra Rifles, 36 Rashtra Rifles, 48 Rashtra Rifles. And we had some other arms combined with us. But we took the ownership of the units. So in this case, you have NDRF units, the ownership being taken by different CAPF, Central Armed Police Forces. The BSF has 3 units of its own. The CRPF has 3 units of its own. And similarly, the ITBP, the SSP, the CISF, and today even the Assam Rifles has got 1 unit. Okay. Highly professional force. They learned their lesson so well, and the NDMA was set up by General Nirmal Vij, the former chief of the army staff, who total professional who brought lessons from his experience of the past. And along with him was Mr. K.M. Singh, the ex-DG of the SSB and later on also with the CISF. And he's the one who set up the NDRF, giving them the various aspects of training, organization, etc., the equipping, organization, training, all that was done at that time. And 1,100 men to a unit. Very heartening to see someone thought about it. You don't start giving out 500 men, 600 men to a unit. 1,100 men, which meant 6 company worth, strength worth. 18 teams could be formed of 50 men each. 18 teams can be formed by an NDRF unit, all similarly equipped with the required equipment. And many of these units are specialist units. Today, we have converted some units which have got specialization for forest fire. Some have got specialization for avalanches even today. Some have got specialization for glacial lake outburst floods. So, in different ways, for example, the ITBP units are all placed to look after the mountain areas, right? So, all this has led to a high degree of resilience today, capability, and the NDRF is all the time, 24/7, it is involved in training someone or training itself. It is, for example, under the Prime Minister's orders, school safety program, which is going on, the hospital safety program, which is going on. The NDMA has been tasked by the Prime Minister of India that we will undertake training to make sure that all the nuclear power projects, 8 nuclear power projects, are safe at all times, and that if there's a requirement of a response, then the off-site. If there's an on-site disaster, of course, the plant looks after it, but if the off-site part of it, the effect on the areas around, we are the ones who ensure that the response part of it is practiced and rehearsed from time to time. I'm telling you all this because I think it is necessary for the people in India to know that, you see, it's all matters, it's a matter of interest. How much of interest there is in issues such as this. Everyone imagines that disasters can only hit the neighbor. It can hit someone else. It can't hit you. That's human perception. We all believe we are safe. किसी और को लगेगा. वो किसी और को can be you one day. No, who could have imagined that this accident which happened in Jaipur 7 days ago, where you had this gas-laden, CNG-laden vehicle coming and crashing and hitting another vehicle, or getting hit by another vehicle, would blast, right, and create such a massive fire in that area. 14, we're lucky 14 people died because it was at such a time. If it had happened at a time when the highway was full of vehicles, and if it had spread to those 2 other petrol pumps nearby, my God, you would have had hundreds of casualties. Who knew that the people who died there were the ones who were traveling at that particular moment behind that vehicle? That's destiny. Right. So what I'm trying to get at is, today is the day when in my article also I said, tell your children, tell your grandchildren, such an event has taken place. You should be aware of it. That when an undersea earthquake takes place, a tsunami can be generated. What is a tsunami? And if you happen to be in a resort or some place like that and you've heard that there's an undersea earthquake, you better not be sitting around the resort to enjoy the benefits there. You better be getting out from there and saving your skin. So let me stop here and ask Jan Shankar to consider what else he would like me to speak on.
Yes, sir. We've spoken of the tsunami. You touched upon the Jaipur accident. You touched upon the super cyclone in Orissa. But these are not the only disasters. We have many more disasters. Few years back, we had the couple of years back, or last year, we had the glacial outburst in Sikkim. Something which you never thought of. Then we had this case of a tunnel collapsing, and where people who were working in that got trapped. You had mudslides coming in where people got, just washed away with the mudslide like a tsunami. but the only thing is full of mud. You're just trapped under it and you're tied. So disasters come in many forms. While the nation does what it has to do, but there is I think, a level at which the citizen has to get involved. Awareness, first response, help, local thing. Could you throw some light on it? Is there any movement on it? Is there any way people can get organized in their mohallas, in their villages, in their
This is,
cities?
thank you so much. Thank you so much for that question. First of all, I think the start point is if our viewers themselves can sometime, or make a note now and sometime later, access the website of the National Disaster Management Authority. It's a very interesting website. On that, there is one thing called the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda. Right? Access that. It will give you a code and very simple language explained. What are the demands of the modern world today as far as disaster management are concerned? For example, early warning is given by the Prime Minister of India as a human right, virtually as a human right, which means that every Indian has the right to get early warning of an approaching cyclone, of an approaching tsunami, of the possibility of lightning hitting him if he's working in the fields of Odisha, Chhattisgarh, or Jharkhand. Or if he is living in the mountains and there's a possibility of a glacial lake outburst, then he must get the early warning to be able to escape that. Almost a human right. We haven't reached that level yet in terms of technology to be able to deliver that as per the desire of the Prime Minister. But the NDMA and the scientific community of India are working very intensely on this. For example, the IMD can give us 5 to 7 days notice of cyclones. We can get a tsunami warning. Today, you can get 1.5 to 2 hours of tsunami warning, at least in the eastern coast, if something has happened near the Andaman Islands. 2 hours of notice can be given out, which is a fair amount of notice. A glacial lake outburst, you can, if you follow the procedures and follow the available technologies of early warning today, you can give up to a 25 to 30 minute, maybe even more warning for that. Lightning, we can give a 45-minute warning to people of that area and have sirens blaring in that area where lightning is likely to strike. All this is happening. The second of one of the other principles in the 10-point program is technologies for all. We need to have technologies building up all the time to give us early warning, give us resilience, how to overcome these disasters. I can tell you that this morning itself, I had 4 companies, technical companies, coming and giving us presentations in the NDMA. We are always ready, waiting to listen to people. Come, give us a presentation. We'll see what is the worth of what you have to offer. We'll analyze it, we'll check it and see, can we apply this somewhere? We'll put you across to the state disaster management authorities across in the states, or to someone else to see if your technology can be made use of. For example, if you've got mapping technology. Now today, mapping is a very, very important aspect. If you've got data, you've got the ability to mine data, right? Artificial intelligence. You've got drone technology with you. There's so much which is happening in this domain. All that can be made use of for various aspects of disaster response or disaster readiness, right? You can imagine that one of the points which the Prime Minister has given is gender sensitivity. Now, where in the world you talk about gender sensitivity in these situations? But here the point exists that in disaster situations, the people who are most affected are first the women. They are the ones who are running the households. They are the ones who are looking after the children, right? They are the ones sitting at home. Others are outside perhaps. They get affected very fast. So we must cater for their escape. We must cater for their rescue, search and rescue, etc., etc. That's the degree of sensitivity in which this 10-point agenda has been created. Then create a network of universities. Knowledge is the most important thing. If you can proliferate knowledge on all this, because as per normal academic pursuit, where will disaster management come? Hardly in anything in priority. But now we are looking at, for example, the UP government has included it as part of the syllabus from, I think, KG till class 12. Every single class has got something on disaster management. It has been incorporated in all the textbooks out there. So knowledge is a huge thing. So what I'm trying to tell you is essentially that ways and means to gain knowledge is extremely important. And then proliferate it. Now, I look at Delhi, and I think one of the finest ways of proliferating knowledge, proliferating early warning, telling people what could possibly happen and educating them on what measures they should take is through the WhatsApp groups of the various housing societies, the resident welfare associations, the RWAs. RWAs are very strong. They've got their own WhatsApp groups everywhere. Every society I've lived in, there's been an RWA with a WhatsApp group. Now, what do you do on that WhatsApp group? Discuss servants, discuss contributions for melas and for some other functions, etc. Once in a while, use it. Once in a week, use it to education. It's a very, very powerful tool. And it will save lives. If you can tell people how to look after their during Diwali, to how to take fire precautions, right? To make sure that there's no fire. Otherwise, you find in India everywhere, high-rise buildings, invariably one fire will take place somewhere or the other. You are risking life of so many people. So this is the manner. Networking, knowledge management, and knowledge proliferation is one of the finest ways of saving lives anywhere. So having said this, I thought I must also just tell you that for your confidence building, there are lots and lots of programs which are going on at the moment as far as the NDMA is concerned. We've got a lightning mitigation program. We've got a heat wave mitigation program going on. We've got a landslide mitigation program, a forest fire mitigation program. All kinds of programs are being laid out at the moment. India is a vast country. We may not be able to touch base with every place, but specifically certain areas we are trying to touch something or the other to bring it to the benefit of the people in some way or the other. Our research and development, which is continuously taking place at the NDMA with different organizations, the work which is going on with many civil society organizations, etc. And the last point on this, since General Shankar has brought in the issue of glacial lake outburst, let me tell you, we have got 7,000 lakes which are vulnerable. Out of them, 119 have been identified which are highly vulnerable, right? Mostly you will find who is deployed in these places, the armed forces, right? It's the Indian Army, which is deployed, or the ITBP, right? After the raising of the NDRF, somehow a perception got created that no longer is this the responsibility of the army now. Now it's all NDRF. They are all geared up for it. They have got the equipment. They're trained for it. India is too vast for 16 units to cover it. How can 16 NDRF units cover India? The Indian border, look at the northern border. Even 50 units cannot cover the northern border. So we have to have a contribution from our Indian Armed Forces, which includes the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, all of them. All the CAPS, state police forces. Now, the uniformed forces have got a special responsibility to ensure that they train themselves, make their men aware, and when the need arises, they should be able to rise to the occasion. And it's happened many places. The ITPP did a great job in North Sikkim. The army itself has done a great job in Sikkim itself. In the Chamoli disaster, the army did a great job. And you just saw what happened in Wayanad, where the army set up that bridge in record time. We have been doing from the NDMA side, what we have been initiating is jointness. How to bring the armed forces, the disaster management organizations, the police forces, the various agencies like the IMD, the Central Water Commission, and the DGRE, etc., together on one platform for everyone to have a learning process. We've done a couple of exercises together, and this is the way forward. Civil-military cooperation, civil-military fusion. At the end of the day, if you have done all this in pre-disaster times, when disaster hits you, you will automatically respond. You saw what happened in the Silk Yara tunnel rescue. We had 30 agencies working together, and all working in first absolute perfect tune with each other. And at the end of the day, you saw the success which was gained. So at the end of it, a well-oiled machine is what is disaster management, the requirement of disaster management, and the maximum cooperation and coordination that you can achieve can actually afford that.
Thank you, sir. I pick up a cue from what you said. India is too vast. But simultaneously, I will say, so are disasters. The kind of disasters which come, the shape, size, and everything is also, it's beyond imagination. So while a lot is being done at central level, at the national level, but I think there's a lot which is required to be done at the state, district, and taluk level, right? And most importantly, while a lot of people are looking, at mitigation, isn't there a case for us to be made disaster aware specific to your locality? And a thing goes, for example, if you're going next to a chemical factory, people should know that, look, there's a disaster waiting to happen in this chemical factory besides everything else. And people are aware of this because, like you said, if you're aware, you'll save yourself. And simultaneously, isn't there a case for some kind of preparation right down to a household level as to how do you prepare for a disaster? You never know what kind of a disaster hits. And let me tell you, why am I talking? For the past 3 years, I've been a victim of cyclones. All of us in Chennai and Tamil Nadu coast have been victim of cyclones, and we've discussed this just about 3 months back. Right? Every time the same thing comes. Look, I don't have an emergency light in my house. I don't have food in my house. When trees start falling, I can't go out anywhere and I'm stuck. So I think there is something else called awareness and basic preparation which is required to be done. I'd like your views on that.
Thank you for initiating that. I was in Hawaii in the year 2000. I remember doing a course at the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. And within 3 days of my arrival, we had a cyclone warning coming in. And I still remember on television, I was getting this warnings coming to me, information being fed to me. Please prepare yourself, keep candles, keep matchboxes, store enough food for 7 days with you. I went and bought all that and purchased and kept it with me. All this was happening, right? But there was no early warning system of dissemination because mobiles were there, but this kind of an SMS alert system had not really come into being. Television was a really powerful medium. And just by the way, in the very near future, as we are going along, the television will once again come back as a very strong medium to you for disaster management. Because now the NDMA is working on a system by which you will find that there will be a thing called cell broadcast, which means that the message for disaster will be put out on a system through a technology by which, number one, if your mobile happens to be on silent, even your mobile will come live. Okay, it will buzz and come live, right? The second thing is, we will have a tie-up with television companies where immediately the scroll will start coming on your television screen, warning you of what some of you may have already seen this in demonstrations that have already taken place in a number of areas, right? A scroll will start scrolling there. Railway station, all electronic hoardings, all televisions which are there, all signages which are there will come alive with messages of disaster. If you are traveling on the National Highway Authority of India, the big signages that you have, electronic signages, will all come alive with warnings of disaster. And all this will happen with the touch of a button from the Emergency Operations Center at the State Disaster Management Authority, that particular SDMA. So this is all going to have to come into the in offing next 6 months. I would say a possibility of extending to about 9 months or so, but this should all happen. Having said this, the SDMAs are a very important. You see, ultimately, disaster management is not the responsibility of the NDMA. The execution of it is the responsibility of the SDMA. Right? We are the ones who make the guidelines, the policy, the budgeting. We provide the budgeting for it, etc., and we coordinate. We do a lot of tremendous amount of coordination between different agencies, absorption of technologies, and things like that. But the actual execution, handiwork of execution, is all done at the State Disaster Management Authority. We've got some very powerful SDMAs in India. The Odisha SDMA, the Tamil Nadu SDMA, the Gujarat SDMA. These have very experienced SDMAs. The Kerala SDMA. They've all experienced disasters, very, very, very serious kind of disasters, and have come out the winner in almost all those cases, right? The events, big events, the Amarnath Yatra. We do mock exercises, at least 2 mock exercises for the Amarnath Yatra every year, right? We are now in the process of doing everything for the Mahakumbh, which is commencing on 13th of January. Even as I talk, tomorrow there's a mock exercise of Mahakumbh in the Prayagraj. So part of my team is sitting there at the moment. On the 3rd of January, we have the second mock exercise. I shall be there personally to oversee it myself, right? So this is something which keeps on happening. It's not necessary for you to know it, but it's necessary to know it to that extent that it builds up confidence in you, that there is someone somewhere sitting taking stock of all this which is there. But consciousness, you see, you as a citizen of the country can contribute tremendously by being conscious all the time about this. If you are not conscious and your families are not conscious about it, you tend to get stuck in very, very awkward kind of situations. If you've gone for the Mahakumbh, then prepare yourself. Make sure that if you're taking your children with you, make sure you have a secure system by which you keep them bound to you virtually, because there are going to be 40 crore people. The footprint is going to be 40 crore this time, as far as the Mahakumbh is concerned, right? So it is this kind of a thing. You train yourself in simple first aid. Understand the basics of first aid. It's always good to educate your children as they grow up. By the time they reach class 8, 9, 10, they should know the basics of first aid, if nothing else, right? So these are the kind of measures. If every citizen of the country starts becoming a little more aware of this, it will actually give the whole system a complete kickstart. And you will find ourselves, we are already one of the very mature nations in the world, emerging because of the kind of measures that are going on. The Prime Minister happens to be a person who's experienced hugely on this in Gujarat. It is he who got the first Disaster Management Act of India in a state passed, Gujarat. And on the basis of that, the National Disaster Management Act of India was passed by the Parliament here. We've just had a review of the National Disaster Management Act. If you've been following the media, and you would have seen that one of the very important things which has emerged is that so far you had NDMA, you had the SDMA, and you had 750 DDMAs, District Disaster Management Authorities. Now, once this act is passed by the Rajya Sabha, it's not just been passed by the Rajya Sabha, then you will also, it will become mandatory to have disaster management authorities down to the municipal level. Every town and city will be required to have its own disaster management authority. And therefore, it will get, it will go down to a greater level. Proliferation of knowledge, capability, funding, etc. will all go down to the lower levels. So all this is in the offing, and hopefully the last point which I want to make on this is that we are conscious of the fact that a tremendous amount of infrastructure is coming up all over India. In the last 10 years, Our airports, we've got 3 times more airports in India almost. The number of aircraft which have been acquired by India has doubled and more than that. So as a result, non-aviation disasters are likely to proliferate in India. We are not concerned about aviation disasters that the Civil Aviation Ministry or Civil Aviation Department looks after. We are concerned about non-aviation, flooding of airfields, of airports, right? What happens in the case of an earthquake to an airport and to a runway, etc.? These are the kind of things. Fire is a huge problem because the amount of electricity, the amount of power which is there in every airport. So we want to make sure that all this infrastructure is safe. And alongside this, the amount of chemical storage that you have in this country, no one realizes it. The amount of chemical storage, and particularly in the port cities, the ports areas. I don't have to remind you about what happened to Beirut, right? We don't want something like Beirut happening in a port city in Gujarat or Odisha or some place like that. So this is something that we are taking stock of. Almost everything that you can think of in the world of disaster is being given a look today. We are still not right there to make India completely disaster resilient, but I can tell you a lot of work is happening from the government as far as this is concerned.
Yes, so I think that was very nice that you put across what's happening and what people need to know. I'd like you did mention that India is one of the very advanced countries in terms of disaster management and disaster mitigation and relief. How do you think we need to use this capability to be the net security provider of the Indian Ocean region? Because like I said, security and disaster go hand in hand. And are we doing enough about it? This is not more, this is a question which people need to understand.
This is a very important question, and in a very brief moment, let me just outline this for you. We are doing a tremendous amount of outreach, a lot of training with the regional organizations, with the state, with the disaster management authorities of Nepal, Bangladesh, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and things like that. Mostly tabletop exercises. In some places, we are actually having physical exercises also. Wherever there is an HADR, international HADR opportunity like the one which rose in Turkey, our response was perhaps the fastest. There was a time when you remember, Jan Shankar, Zamana tha, let me speak in Hindi also, Zamana tha, जब कहते थे कि भारत का जो रिस्पॉन्स है यूनाइटेड नेशंस को कुछ फोर्स भेजने के लिए तो हमको 8 महीने लगते हैं, बांग्लादेश का तो 7 दिन में हो जाता है. टुडे वी आर द फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर्स ऑन इंटरनेशनल एचएडीआर. टर्की सबसे पहले हमारे ट्रूप्स पहुंचे, both NDRF and our 60 parafield ambulance or parafield hospital, both were the first to reach. Important thing, they reached there absolutely self-contained. कोई डीजल नहीं मांगा, कोई तेल नहीं मांगा, कोई खाना नहीं मांगा, कुछ नहीं मांगा. We just went there, plonked and started working. That is the kind of response you need. And this is what we're trying to provide as you say, as a net security provider to the region complete and beyond the region into the Indo-Pacific complete.
Yeah, I think so, sir. I think we have come a long way in this business of disaster management and to build disaster resilience. In fact, my own personal view is that in this region and probably in the world also, we are far more disaster resilient than we can think. It's not only a matter of responding to disasters, we've even responded to humanitarian disasters and evacuated our people from all over the world, which I think no other country has been able to do so far. I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes on this and then we'll take questions.
Yes, there's no doubt. And I think one of the champions of this has been our former Chief of the Army Staff, General V.K. Singh, who, as a Minister of State in the Government of India, has led this personally from the front. And that actually just exemplifies the frontline leadership of the Indian Army. कि जब इस तरह की चीज होती है तो जनरल जो है वो सामने होता है, आगे से करता है सब कुछ. He was himself there in almost every situation जहां से हमने अपने डायस्पोरा के लोगों को हवाई जहाज में बिठाकर यहाँ पर वापस लाए हैं कॉन्फ्लिक्ट सिचुएशन से। अगर आप यमन में देखिए और बहुत सी जगहों पर, आई कांट रिकॉल, यूक्रेन में से भी लाने में बहुत उन्होंने मदद की थी। एंड सो दिस has been something that we have been very good at. I think this is a very good message and international reputation जो भारत का इसके वजह से बना है, looking after your citizens, whatever, irrespective of where you have traveled, the government of India will go and pluck you out from there and bring you back if you are in trouble. That is the message which has gone home very clearly.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'd like to tell everyone who's watching this, please give this video to all your friends and family members and ask them to see it. Ask them to spend this 1 hour of listening to what General Hasnain has said to you, all of us. Because one day it could be his, her, or your life. Like he said, we all think that the neighbor will die, or a person in the next village will die, or in the next road which will die. You never know when the tree is going to fall on you during a cyclone. It all takes just one tree to fall on your head to die. It doesn't take long. Or an odd line to come down to go. And you need to go through this problem once or twice in your life to know what disaster is. I have gone through it. As recently as last year, 4 days without electricity, without water, without anything. We survived because I was a Fauji, prepared, self-contained, like what he said. Okay? Long back, I am going back now to 84. 84, Chennai had a cyclone in which it took my houses up to first floor were, in water. I've gone through that and I understand what he's saying. And from then to now, I am prepared for my own disaster to save me, my family first, because your first response is to your family. And thereafter, once your family, everyone is safe, you start helping others if you can. If not, just save yourself and be happy and don't become a burden to others. That's the first thing of disaster relief and management at individual level. Don't wait for the government to come. The government might not come. It is not because they don't want to come. It is because they can't come. It is beyond human capability for them to come. I'm not talking as an individual. I've also handled Bombay in disaster as a GOC of that area and in Bombay. So there are limits to what the government can do for you. You have to do it for yourself. So insist on all of your friends to see this video. With this, I'll just take a couple of questions which I thought are interesting, right? And a few comments. Okay. With more disasters likely to occur, can we put outgoing Agniveers to create more units for disaster management? Your views, sir.
Let me tell you an aspect which I have not covered in my talk so far. और ये बहुत जरूरी चीज है. Community disaster के लिए, आपदा के लिए, the finest response always comes from the community. कोई बाहर से नहीं आएगा आपको बचाने के लिए इतनी जल्दी, जितनी जल्दी आप अपने आप को बचाएंगे या आपकी जो इमीडिएट कम्युनिटी है वो बचा देगी. और ये एक गोल्डन प्रिंसिपल है डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट. So what you have to remember is your community resilience must be very strong. You must, when I spoke about RWA, the RWA should have a system by which it creates a set of able-bodied people who will work together in a disaster, etc. And this kind of a thing, we call it an incident response system, IRS. It's a very interesting aspect. If you go onto the website of the NDMA, you will find a full chapter there on this incident response system. It is akin to an army SOP. कि आपको डेजिग्नेशन दिया है, आप रिस्पॉन्सिबल ऑफिसर हैं, आप ये करेंगे, आप ये काम करेंगे, आप ये काम करेंगे. It is notified like we notify it in our part 1 order of the unit. In the unit, so-and-so responsibility is so-and-so, we put it in the part 1 order. Everyone comes to know it because it is read by everyone, right? Similarly, you can do this for your RWA, you can do it for your little municipality, for your township, anything like this. But a system of community awareness and community responsibility and response must be outlined for everyone. Why I'm saying this is this issue of Anniv came up. You see, what the government of India, what perhaps people are not aware is 100,000 Abda Mitras, friends in disaster, have been created in the last 3 years. 325 most vulnerable districts of India out of 750, which means 50% of the India has been covered by this 100,000 Abda Mitras. They are trained by the NDRF. They are insured. They are not paid. They are volunteers. They are paid, right? They've got about 20,000 rupees worth of equipment which is lying with them. They've got a special app on their mobile phone so that they can be mustered on a call. They can be mustered immediately by one message. For your information, जब ये एक्सीडेंट हुआ था बालासोर में, तो बाहर से कोई इतनी जल्दी नहीं पहुंच सका था वहां पर. सबसे पहले हमारे आपदा मित्र पहुंचे थे. They were the first people. And in Wayanad, they've done some great work. So volunteerism is one of the finest ways of doing disaster management. So this only brings me to the subject of Agniveers. What we are looking at is how to proliferate this whole business of volunteerism, right? In fact, the Honorable Prime Minister himself has desired this. I mean, recently उन्होंने ये desire किया है कि अग्निवीर जो जा रहे हैं उनको भी देखा जाए कि किस तरीके से वो उनका इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है. In these kind of organizations, we have not yet given it a full thought. We are in the process of doing it because this has only happened recently, a couple of days ago. And I'm sure a system will emerge from this to trained Agniveers already train them a little more, put them into manageable bodies and make them responsible for certain tasks in their given areas. So this is definitely on the cards. As we go along, this whole system of community response is only going to proliferate more and more. And that's I can assure.
The second question, sir. Is there a readiness to deal with chemical disasters like the infamous Bhopal tragedy or any similar biohazard or any potential man-made disasters, including containment and mitigation procedures?
I must appreciate your thought process of the person asking this question. Obviously, he's aware of things, right? Bhopal was a terrible tragedy, very, very bad. And chemical disasters are one of the most sinister things. I mean, I tell you, it happens so slowly, and then you don't come to know. Gases have come around you, around in your area. You suddenly start feeling spluttering around here and there. And before you know anything has happened, you are already dizzy and you are almost dying. The readiness for chemical disasters, not only in India but around the world, is something which is always questionable. In India, lots of efforts are going on. Like I can tell you, the government of India is hugely concerned. There have been times, first of all, I don't think the expertise required on this, much more expertise is perhaps required on this. For example, when the Visakhapatnam gas leak took place 3 years ago, it was very difficult actually even identifying the agent, the gas which was, sort of spewing out in that area. If we had an underground, from the methane gas from under the thing, it was from a particular company which had sort of thrown things into its underground drainage system. From there, you had a whole problem of gas coming out into Ludhiana, into one area of Ludhiana. 11 people died of that. And no one could really make out. It was so difficult to find out where is it happen, how is it happening, etc. This is one of the very, very difficult disaster domains. Hazards, no doubt about it. There are lots of experts in the country. The NDMA is particularly now focusing on this. I can assure you this. Even today, I was totally focused on this. This is a domain that we are going to look at very, very seriously. The government of India has already given directions on this. A lot is happening on it already. And hopefully you will find better trained people. At the moment, I think training and manpower, perhaps knowledge proliferation, is not yet sufficient on a issue of chemical disasters. Why chemical disasters? When you look at the entire domain of CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear. Now you'll be happy to know that during the G20, we gave a tremendous focus to this, to make sure that all the areas in Delhi were covered. Wherever there was a gathering, wherever there was a G20 gathering, and we had over 200 G20 gatherings all over India, we made sure that there was a CBRN coverage given there by the concerned agencies which are involved in this. And for that, a tremendous amount of training is required. We are doing this similarly for Mahakumbh. We're making sure when we go on the 3rd, 4th there, when I go there, we are going to see a demonstration. We are going to see capability development. How exactly are we going to respond to various situations? If there's a chemical leak somewhere, if there's a deliberate chemical leak somewhere, and things of that nature. So, while your concern is absolutely correct, there is also a fair amount of work going on in it. How much it can be much, much more. And I'm sure as we go along, the volume of this focus is only going to increase that much more.
The last question, sir. Lakshan is from South Africa. How many kilometers away from the beach should people be away to at least get waist high height water? How high in a building should people climb if they can move inward?
No, depending on where you are, of course. I'm not sure what is the science behind it, how much. A prediction map, when you do mapping for this kind of a thing, the predictability to say what is the level to which the waves will reach, with what level of the Richter scale of an earthquake, how deep it is in the earth, and everything depends on various dynamic variables of this kind. It can be 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 100 kilometers below the earth. If it is just 2 kilometers below the surface of the sea, obviously the effect of the tsunami is going to be much higher, and the tsunami waves are going to be much higher, etc. These things will happen in this manner. So there can be nothing predicted, but I would say from general knowledge, because I haven't looked at this issue myself, I'll be very frank. I would be talking off the top of my head if I said that I know everything about it. I would say a distance of about 2.5 to 3 kilometers would be a reasonable distance. In whatever we have seen in most tsunamis, that's the distance. The Japanese tsunami had come much deeper inside, much deeper. You saw how the flow had, you've seen the videos. The flow was much, much more. It had reached the airport and places like that, right? But generally from the beachfront, from the coastline, about 3 kilometers inside and a higher ground will be one of the safer places. Now, what happened in the Car Nicobar Islands, I learned during my visit to the Andamans this time, everyone made a beeline to the runway. The runway was on the highest area. So everyone was making a beeline to the runway. That is the place where they found the waves did not reach up till there. Otherwise, the waves came and went. Now, the thing which happens in a tsunami is that it's not as if a one-time wave has come and it's gone back and it's not going to come back again. No, it is rocking up and down. It's coming, then going, then coming, and then going. Now that causes even more devastation than no. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in a recent RWA meet and to improve its performance, I have suggested the setting up of an Oscar group. Thank you for your views of an earlier talk, which gave me the idea. Thanks a lot, Akash. You've been a source of common sense whenever you come across. The last questions, I think it's also an interesting thing which you must take on. What is our preparedness level, or how much are we prepared when new form of coronavirus, biological weapons, or any other pandemic situation will occur in future? Some thoughts, sir.
Yes. In fact, I had a presentation this morning also on this capability. Someone who came to tell us a little more about. There's a lot of research work going on. You see, we in India treated the coronavirus pandemic very seriously. Uh, and at the moment, we have still not been able to compile all the data which has come out of it. The tremendous amount of data which has come out of this, and studies are still very much on. Lots of people are doing research work on this. If the NDMA's overall report, compiled report from different states, etc., is still not ready, it will be in the very, very near future, right? So we have learned our lessons. Our state of readiness is much higher. But obviously, every pandemic of this nature which comes with its own dynamics. You can't cater for the last one this time. You can't say we catered for so and so inoculation and vaccination for that pandemic, so the same one will be available or will be applicable this time. It's not so. Otherwise, we would always be ready with that much stocks of vaccines available with us. Last time it took us 6 months before our vaccines really came into being at that particular time. And then to establish the credibility of the vaccines. And you are a doctor yourself, you would realize that to establish the credibility, the acceptance among the public, etc., became a major challenge, right? So I think we have learned our lessons. The health ministry has done a lot of work on this, and some of our service-related companies are also doing a lot of work on this. Research establishments like the Tata Institute of Social Studies, Deloitte, and companies of that kind, they are doing a lot of study on this, compiling data, putting this all together. Hopefully, as we go along, we are still just 2 years. Actually, if you really look at it, we are just 2.5 years away from the end of the last pandemic. And this is a very short period to be able to compile data, put everything together, and be ready for anything else. Hopefully, you will not find a second pandemic coming immediately closely following the last. The other time when we had it was in 1918, 1920, and then we had the second one coming in 2020. So once in 100 years, in between there have been many other smaller ones, but not of this size. But notwithstanding that, I think we are much more conscious. We have put down much more literature on this. People are better read. The only problem is, as generations change, this knowledge doesn't get passed on easily. While the medical profession may understand it and the medical professionals will probably pass on from one to the other, public awareness on this will start waning. There's no doubt about it. It will start waning. And there's not very much that you can actually do about it.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think you covered the whole thing quite nicely, very comprehensively, and you covered a large canvas. All I'd like to tell everyone is, again, ask every chap whom you know, your friend, philosopher, guide, your family, your wife, your children, to sit through this video, because it's their life. Okay, that's more important than Pakistan or China, or China building a dam, or whatever. Okay, the world will remain. Whether Narendra Modi becomes the prime minister for the 4th time or not doesn't matter, but the disaster will come irrespective of that. So I would suggest, educate yourself and save yourself. That's first. Family first, self first. If you don't live, your family will have a problem. If your family and all don't think, you can't help your neighborhood. And if your neighborhood is not intact in a nice manner, you can't help others. Like he said, what the community can do, what the individual can do, when the disaster comes, in the immediate aftermath of the disaster, is the greatest relief you can provide to yourself. The rest, everyone comes. Everyone comes. Don't worry, people will come. The army will come, the disaster relief agency will come, everyone will come. But this is something like a heart attack. It has a golden hour time. You have to help yourself. So that's all I've had to say. If you have anything to add in the end, you can.
Thank you so much. I thought this was a very important program. Let me tell you, a lot of people in NDMA itself are listening to it and viewing it, right? I put it out across to everyone. And your advice is very well taken. I hope a lot of people take your advice and view this program. And once in a while, I think, once in 2 months or so, let's have a repeat of this with some fresh add-ons to it. I think we'll be doing community service. We'll be doing service to the nation by spreading the word of how should the communities look at disaster management. Because this is going to be something that, with climate change, this is something that they have to get used to. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir, and thank you, sir.